Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeff Chamberlain, Deputy City Manager for the City of Kalamazoo, and I will serve as the moderator for this afternoon's video release event. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today as we release some important videos, photos, and audio from the Proud Boy March and counter protests that happened here in Kalamazoo on August 15th. So just as a reminder to our media friends that are joining us, if you could please mute your audio, have your video turned off, and it would be helpful if you had your username on the screen also. So today we are joined by Assistant Chief Vernon Coakley, Assistant Chief David Boyson, and also Chief Carrie Ann Thomas from the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. After Chief Thomas, Assistant Chiefs Coakley and Boyson walk us through the timeline, photos, video, and audio, we will have some time to open the floor for questions from the media.
Excuse me, before we begin, Julie Delmare from Fox 17 here. I'm unable to record this in Zoom. It says I need permission from the host.
We are recording this video. You're welcome to do screenshots and record it, but I think only one user can record it at a time.
I've been in multiple Zooms where multiple media outlets are able to record at the same time. I just wanted to get that permission. You can go in through settings and grant it.
Okay. Is there a way you can do that, folks? For our IT staff?
Right now. Thank you, Gabby.
Okay. Are we good? Sorry, folks.
Good.
Well, sorry about that. Need to fix that piece for us, but just wanted to kind of remind everybody that these videos that we're going to show this afternoon are going to be some important highlights, and we want to make sure that we are showing this to the media and to the public in keeping with our commitment for transparency with the City of Kalamazoo. We do want to make a note, though, that some of the videos are graphic. There are some graphic images, as well as some violence and some harsh language. So when the videos are complete, Chief Thomas will also have a few words about some key lessons that we as the City of Kalamazoo have learned from this, so we can keep moving forward in a positive manner. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Carrie Ann Thomas.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm Chief Carrie Ann Thomas, and I'm honored to serve as the Chief of Kalamazoo Public Safety. I've been here at KDPS for over 25 years. And at KDPS, our top priority is to keep our residents, visitors, businesses, media, protesters safe. And we always encourage nonviolent, peaceful demonstrations. And today, Assistant Chief Vernon Coakley is here with me. He was boots on the ground that day. And Assistant Chief Dave Boyson, who was also out at the event and is in charge of our investigation divisions. And they're going to help me run through just a summary of what occurred on that day. And we're going to be sharing photos and videos and audio evidence from the events of August 15th for the Proud Boys March to the City of Kalamazoo. And it is just a summary. It is not everything in its entirety. And we highlight a few things, but to put in context of what occurred over those few hours of August 15th. And I recognize that a lot has been made of our decision and our efforts to minimize violence and de-escalate the situation. And I'll give you a little bit of that perspective as we go through this and at the end of our video review. And like I said, you'll just see key highlights before, during, and after the events, including videos, social media posts, audio clips, some body cam videos. And learning from other cities' experiences and our experiences summer, and at the request of the counter protest organizer, we decided to keep the officers situated at the ready until the protests became riotous, assaultive, physically destructive, or our presence was needed. And this was a strategic decision. We know that we want to make sure that we always reduce tensions and de-escalate, and sometimes that is done by avoiding a heavy police presence that could spark civil unrest or violence or chaos. And that was our mindset going into August 15th, looking at the intelligence that we had. And the evidence combined with the recent report issued by the City Commission Subcommittee has shown several areas in which we can improve, and we are always about continuous improvement here at KDPS. And we want to serve this community in the manner that they expect, and we will move forward with those improvements as we work through this process. And I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Chief Vernon Coakley and Assistant Chief Dave Boyson.
Thanks, Chief Thomas. Good afternoon, everyone. I am proud to serve the Kalamazoo community. As Chief Thomas mentioned, I was a boot on the ground during the Proud Boys protests in town here in Kalamazoo on August 15th. We closely monitored the Proud Boys in the weeks leading up to their march, and we were in regular communications with the counter-protesters and the Proud Boys. KDPS actively monitored from multiple locations before, during, and after the march of the counter-protesters. As you will see from the videos, this was a chaotic and dangerous situation that changed very quickly. I want to thank all the officers on the scene at the time, and you'll see that most people, regardless on what side they were on, remained lawful throughout the situation. However, some did not. Reviewing the footage has allowed us to critically review our response to the march and the protest so we can see where we can improve so we can better protect and serve our community in the future. And with that, I will now begin our review of the video. Thank you.
So I'm going to share my screen so that we can bring up this PowerPoint presentation. I want to apologize up front if we have any audio or technical challenges here. We'll just work through them together. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Looks good.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Cloyson, and as stated earlier, the information contained within is a summary of the protests and counter-protests that occurred on August 15th. And again, a warning, the content and images and videos some viewers may find upsetting or disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Is what you see here in this first slide is on the left is a social media post that we obtained on the Wednesday before the Saturday's protest. On the right, you see the original post that was put on social media by the Proud Boys earlier in the summer. Since that post had been made, we began monitoring social media to try to determine what to expect and also researching into the Proud Boys group. The post on the left that we saw on social media that was put out by the counter-protester and it's in figure 1. And there were some words in there that really concerned us, some trigger words, some really strong language about KKK recruits and lynching, and we knew that this might elicit quite a strong response with counter-protesters. So we had that information going into our Thursday briefing where we came up with our operational plan. And again, the counter-protest organizer assured us that this would be a peaceful demonstration and they were only expecting 20 or 30 people to attend.
Yeah, so with that information, we as an organization at Being the City, with the Downtown Partnership, we had a meeting knowing this information, and so we reached out again to the counter-protest organizer. And as Chief Boyson just mentioned, through that contact, we learned that the counter-protest organizer specifically said that 20 or 30 people would attend this peaceful protest. And so with that communication, I then spoke with the counter-protest organizer and made him aware that we were going to have our crowd management team, and they were going to be available to us in their protective gear, what is known as riot gear. And they will be prepared to respond in any situation dictated. And that counter-protest organizer stated to me that we should keep that team in an air-conditioned building somewhere else. So I attempted contact with the Proud Boys as well, who refused to provide any details about their protest on this day. We were also referred to their attorney, but he did not give any information either.
So just to piggyback on what Chief Coakley and Chief Boyson had said, when we looked at our staffing, looking at the August 15th event, we assembled our crowd management team off-site, prepared to respond to any civil unrest or violence. We ordered in additional public safety officers and placed them into squads, or small groups, and staged in various locations throughout the city, close to downtown. And we also coordinated with our mutual aid law enforcement partners to include the Michigan State Police and our surrounding agencies, who provided us not only additional personnel, but some functional assignments were covered by them. And like I said earlier, when we led off, that KDPS made the strategic decision to avoid a heavy police presence that could spark civil unrest or violence. And I know it's been brought up that we didn't see a lot of police cruisers that day on August 15th, and that was part of our strategic decision. We had seen elsewhere and had experienced that the visual of a police cruiser can sometimes cause people to damage those, and we wanted to avoid that. So we had all of our officers transported in. We had a total of 111 officers that day for this event.
Thanks, Chief. So this is the day. This is August 15th, shortly after 1 p.m. And as I mentioned earlier, I was a boot on the ground, and I was at the location of the Arcadia Festival site. And shortly after 1 p.m., I began to observe men and women arriving armed with assault rifles. As you can see in the figures in front of you, these still photos, you can see the assault rifles. These individuals some of them had a conversation with the counter-protest organizer. And what I observed after that conversation was these particular individuals who were armed with these assault rifles were placed at each entrance of the Arcadia Festival site. Again, this was deemed a peaceful protest. I had that contact with the organizer, and he stated that these people were pro his organization, and they were anti-Proud Boys. So again, this is a peaceful protest. It was deemed a peaceful protest. And figure 6 and 7, this is the Arcadia Festival site, and figure 6 and figure 7 is the downtown area. As you can see, there are offensive and defensive weapons held by these two particular gentlemen. There's a stick and baton, a shield, and there's another, what I would deem a shank that's tied to this gentleman's arm here. As you can see on the ground in this picture as well in figure 7, there is a bat. So this certainly changed the situation.
Yeah, so at approximately 1:30 p.m., we observed the Proud Boys begin marching down Water Street from the Rose Street ramp, approaching Arcadia Festival site. Again, this Proud Boys had advertised on all social media that they were going to start marching at 2. We later learned through intelligence that they intentionally marched early to throw off the timing of the scheduled event.
So the next 3 slides are going to be videos. If you cannot hear the videos, please let me know. We're going to have these videos run in their entirety. We might pause them, and then we're going to follow up with some still photos that point out some of the activities that occur within the videos.
And this first video is obtained from a bystander, but we have imposed over that our radio dispatch traffic, and that is synced in time with the video that you're about to see.
All right, field community units, it looks like they're gonna have a face-off here right in the corner of Eleanor and East Water. Yeah, one, do you have a good visual of that? Paper. Command squads to be prepared to deploy.
So what you're going to see here is the Proud Boys marching. They don't approach the festival site. They continue eastbound on Water, and you'll see on the left side of the screen is counter protesters from the festival site leaving the festival site, approaching the protesters in the street.
All right, the Proud Boys are continuing east on Water, and the other groups are heading southbound towards them. They're going to meet right on the corner here. right, you have a skinnier black male in a gray t-shirt who is now entered the middle of the Proud Boys group and is blocking their travel. They're trying to get him out, and they're continuing eastbound. He's now trying to fight the majority of them. All right, they have deployed pepper spray, and they are now being kicked by the protesters on the sidewalk and engaged in multiple fist fights. They are in the middle of the street and they fight, probably 20 to 30. You might need to move in.
Okay, command, all squads, move in. Just limit to it this time to pepper spray and pepper ball. All squads, move in.
There's a male, red shoes, black shirt, holding a street sign which he broke. There is a white male in a gray t-shirt with a black satchel, throwing a frozen pop can or something of the sort.
There's a PM with red, black tank top with a large wooden bat that he is using to hit people with. He's on the north side of the street around water.
Okay, this next slide is one of the main trigger points of the confrontation. As the Proud Boys were marching eastbound, this individual that is highlighted with the gray tank top enters the crowd and begins to confront the Proud Boys and holds up their march. As they're trying to get him out of the group, other people from the festival site come in from the side and begin launching assaults at the Proud Boys, and you'll see a couple stills highlighted of that, but we're going to let this play through. This individual that you see in the gray will come up again several other times throughout this presentation. This is an overview of the same event, just a different angle from above of the same confrontation. We pause it here. You see an individual with a black tank top holding a wood stick. He comes up also later in the interview up by the sidewalk. There's one of the Proud Boys has become unconscious and is laying on the curb. He can be seen coming up, trying to hit the individual once, missing, and then returning and striking him in the head as he's on the ground. Again, this individual comes up later, and we later did arrest him for assaulting multiple people that day. So the crowd, the protesters, they marched eastbound, and after that, they turned south on Edwards Street, where additional confrontations took place.
So now, so we've arrived. We're going to reel back again. We talked about still photos. This particular figure 9 picture here is the first action of aggression against the Proud Boys. As the Proud Boys were marching down Water Street, if you recall, you see this gentleman with the long hair and the bandana. He has a frozen cup in his hand, or a cup with some type of frozen fluid in it. It was the first strike against the Proud Boys and aggression against the group. The Proud Boys held the particular subject struck with this cup in line in formation and didn't allow him to return the aggression.
Okay, and approximately 132, what you see pictured in figure 10 is the individual with the gray tank top that enters the crowd and starts the initial confrontation and holds up the march. As that's taking place, as you'll see in figures 11, 12, and 13, is individuals that had come out of the Arcadia Festival site approach the group and begins assaulting them, throwing multiple punches. And then in the next one, you'll see a picture when the Proud Boys deployed pepper spray in self-defense from these assaults.
So approximately at 1:33 p.m., the Proud Boys deployed the pepper spray in defense from the assaults from the counter protesters. I must lead in, you can use pepper spray in defense of another. But this particular strike leads into additional fights with some counter protesters using sticks and other objects. In figure 15, you can see a counter protester rushes into the Proud Boys and begins to fight.
Okay, this is an overall timeline of the events. Approximately 1:33 p.m., as you heard in the dispatch, KDPS command orders all squads to move in and authorize the use of pepper balls and pepper spray if necessary. At approximately 1:34 p.m., less than a minute later, KDPS command staff is on the scene at the festival site and is attempting to contact the organizers of the counter protests to have them leave along with their followers. And you'll see this in coming up in video number 4. At approximately 1:36 p.m., squads 5, 6, and 7 deploy at the intersections of Pitcher and Water Street. At approximately 1:38 p.m., squads 5, 6, and 7 arrive at the intersection of Edwards and Water. At approximately 1:42, we declare a police zone and announcements are made for the Arcadia Festival site. By 1:47 p.m., approximately 1:47 p.m., the police zone is established at the festival site.
And Chief Boysen, I just want to jump in. So there's really 3 main skirmishes that take place. The original that we just watched on the video, that lasted approximately 60 seconds total. The second one is about 49 seconds, and then the third one, which is 34 seconds.
So approximately 1:34 p.m., I am looking for the counter protest organizer in the Arcadia Festival site. Along as I am looking for him, along the way as I'm looking for the organizer, I am asking for those who may be injured if they need medical assistance. At approximately 3 minutes later at 1:37, I do locate the organizer of the counter protest, and I begin a conversation with him. And you'll watch this is from my body cam, and you'll watch this interaction in its entirety.
And at the same time, Edwards is having a skirmish.
Yeah, and at the same time, just to the south of this, where we're standing here at Edwards and Water, that would be to the right of the screen. There's more fighting going on between a counter protester.
Who needs a medic? Anybody? Need a medic? I'm good. Tell these people to go home now. Now! All right? Fighting again, right there. You guys stay home. Okay. Go home now!
Yeah, I'd like to point out this gentleman right in the middle of the street in the black hat and the black shirt. As you can see his backpack, he has a bat within that as an offensive or defensive weapon.
Okay, and now you're gonna see as Chief Copley is trying to contact the organizer of the counter protest. This, what you see now is taking place on Edwards, just to the south of his location. You have a still shot in figure 15 of a counter protester shoving one of the Proud Boy members on Edwards Street. And then the next thing you'll see is a video as a skirmish on Edwards. So as the Proud Boys continue to march south, the counter protesters have followed, and they're continuing to engage them as they march, and they deploy pepper spray to stop the assaults and at least get some distance from the counter protesters. You'll see that in this video.
Media!
Carlos is in there. There he is.
We're going to play it one more time. We're going to highlight a couple things. You'll see the individual with the gray tank top that we talked about earlier. He is again now on Water Street, so he's in about every location where there's an incident. And then after they deploy the pepper spray, the Proud Boys who sprays get struck in the head from the back of his head, as you'll see as we play this again and watch it again.
Now, right at the left of the screen there where it's highlighted with the pointer, that is, again, the subject that we're talking about.
Media!
Right here, as the Proud Boy is using mace against the offensive attack, you'll watch him be struck in the head by the gentleman behind him with an object.
Okay, this is more shots of the confrontation on Edwards Street. What you'll see in figure 16 is one of the Proud Boy members was struck with a stick or a baton. And then you'll see on the right a video of a Proud Boy member wearing yellow, and he gets struck with a wooden baton. I'm going to warn you, this one is very graphic and disturbing to watch, but he is doesn't even see it coming. Gets struck in the side of his head.
So we talked about this gentleman in the gray shirt who has been in the fray in 2 of the earlier incidents of the 3 that occurred on this day. This is the gentleman. He is now on Rose Street in Water, well after 2 events. And here you can see and you'll hear that he's physically okay, talking with the MSP or Michigan State Police group, bike group, that is protecting this street or blocking the street from any egress or into the area of the Arcadia Festival site, because a police zone was created here.
We have this gentleman right here. Excuse me, sir. I noticed that these police weren't here earlier. Can you tell me what happened to you when you were back there down near Arcadia Creek? And are you all right, sir? All right. Can I get your name, sir? Carlos Donaldson. Carlos Donaldson. Thank you. You're a Kalamazoo resident? Yes, sir.
So I'd just like to highlight, this is the homeless gentleman that's been highlighted in print and media reference that he was assaulted on this day and hit with a glass bottle. So.
Okay, so what you saw after Edward Street is the Proud Boys continue to march, and they went to Bronson Park where they gathered there. Again, counter protesters followed them the entire way. Some were armed with sticks and batons, and various assaults were committed along the way. The figure 17 shows a couple protesters armed with wooden clubs. The individual on the left was later arrested. And then video 7 is a video of the protest at Bronson Park. Okay, so after that gathering at Bronson Park, which lasted about 6 minutes, they then walked to the Rose Street parking garage. Approximately 2:01 p.m., command staff dispatches squads 8 and 9 to ask the Proud Boys to leave the parking garage, and their refusal to do so would result in their arrest for trespassing. As we can hear in the radio traffic that we're about to play, that command is given. Members of the state police, Michigan State Police, responded to the parking garage. They made up squads 8 and 9 for us that day. The counter protesters are throwing objects at the Proud Boys vehicle as they leave. Some are walking and running in front of the vehicles, and then counter protesters are then blocking Michigan Avenue so that traffic comes to a halt. And we're going to play that radio traffic for you now, asking us to asking the squads to clear the Proud Boys out of the ramp.
Break, fan squad, 8-9. Squad 5 in command. Yeah, by squad 5. Break squad 8-9. Squad 9, go ahead. If you go into the Radisson parking ramp, the Proud Boys, go ahead and tell them to leave. They're trespassing. Per Radisson, leaving that one there. Correct.
And just to be clear, our intent was we wanted them to leave as quickly and safely as possible to end this confrontation. We knew that the longer they stayed, the more fights we would have, and we just wanted them out of town. And so we did deploy officers to hold the people back so they could leave the ramp and leave town.
So this is the area where squads 8 and 9 were. This is over at the Radisson, or the Rose Street garage here, parking garage. And this is body footage or camera footage of the MLive reporter being arrested. What we're going to do is play this video and the next video in its entirety. And Chief Thomas will have some, Chief Thomas and I will have some comments to talk about after both videos.
So I just want to make a couple comments here, and we're showing these two arrests. These are two of the most talked about arrests, the arrest of the MLive reporter and the arrest of the legal observer. On August 16th at the press conference, I did apologize for the arrest of the MLive reporter. As you can see from the video, the MLive reporter was interfering in them trying to clear that area. But we also know that we need the media to cover these events, and we want the media there. And as we move forward, and as we've seen in the subcommittee report, that we have to get better at that, and there has to be education both of my officers as well of the media, so that that's easily identifiable and everyone knows what is allowed and what isn't allowed, and that everyone's easily recognizable. So as we move forward, these are definitely learning lessons that we have to take and figure out how we get better in these type of situations so that they don't occur again.
And just to add to that, the learning lesson, is that in briefing, so in these type of demonstrations, protests, or any event, what we're going to do, and we've now engaged in a part of our strategic plan, is to talk about media or have a title of media in the operational plan so the officers are aware before going out, and then even talking about it after that, a debriefing about the incident and including the media situation. So lesson learned.
So at approximately 2:55 p.m., command staff orders all squads to return to staging locations. The crowds have been cleared from all police zones, and the event was concluded.
So I just want to thank the media for joining us today and participating in this. We'll be releasing these videos and some additional videos on our transparency website, most likely tomorrow, as we go through these and make sure that we can what we can release is released. But I also want to take this opportunity to make 3 points in the spirit of moving our community forward. And as we have said, KDPS intentionally chose to avoid a strong police presence that day, with the goal of minimizing violence and de-escalating what could be a very volatile situation. And no one could say what that situation would have looked like if we had deployed officers and protective equipment, or riot gear, as it's like to be called, to keep protesters and Proud Boys separate. But what transpired that day is not something that we want to see repeated, not something that's acceptable here for the residents of Kalamazoo. Therefore, we will explore other techniques of safe separation based on intelligence, lessons learned, what's going on across the country, and try to communicate those plans and have more input moving forward. At the end of the day, KDPS has to have an operational plan that keeps both officers and citizens safe, and we will continue to try to do our very best in mind. We've seen in other cities there are risks to this strategy, and we will evaluate those. Volatile situations can get worse with heavy police presence, and officers and residents and visitors can get hurt. We will continue to evaluate as we move forward. Second, we are actively engaging in conversations and monitoring various groups as they choose to come to Kalamazoo. We know that neither the Proud Boys nor the counter protesters operated with us in good faith of the true intent that day, and that disinformation was used to guide our actions. And we are going to continue to increase our communication and our intelligence, and so that we can develop strategy with a real understanding of these groups. And that's always a moving target for us, but we are always looking for continuous improvement, not only in our organization, but in our operations. And then we welcome the subcommittee report from the City Commission. It's a great roadmap, and I hope that we can use that to dig deeper in those topics that were identified that really require more engagement and more questions and more discussions. And so with that, I'll open it up to questions. I think I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Thank you, Chiefs. If we do have any questions from the media, we can take them at this time. I'd ask that you either raise your hand virtually or let me know. And I'll call on you one at a time. Thank you. We had some JD Unmarie, the username. I can't tell it very well.
Jay Dunmeyer. It is.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Jay.
No worries. Fox 17.
Yes, please. Yes, Jay. What media outlet are you with? And please go ahead.
Fox 17 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Julie Dunmeyer here. My question is I think a lot of people would interpret, including the counter protesters, that the Proud Boys, being a known hate group, that their very presence in downtown Kalamazoo rather is an attack on people. What's your response to that? Because just, you know, a known hate group coming through downtown, you had to assume maybe that something would go wrong.
So I think our comment to that is we are in the position to allow everyone to exercise their First Amendment right to protest. We, as like I said before, we made that strategic decision that day based on the information we had and the intent we had from the counter organizers, that we had hoped that even with the hate group that it would just be the verbal back and forth, and that's not what happened that day. And I think we all saw that.
Great. Thank you, Chiefs. Next question. Looking around. Are there any other questions
Hi
from the
there,
media?
this is Callie. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, Callie, please
Yes,
go ahead.
great,
Thank you.
Perfect. Just a few things. I wanted to really quick, I wasn't sure if this was clarified or not, but the gentleman that you all kept coming back to, the man with the gray shirt on and the jeans, that the counter protester organizer has said repeatedly that he is a homeless man who perhaps has mental health issues, and he just happened to be, walked into the crowd, not on purpose. But you all are kind of saying that he continues to be there. Have we identified who he is, and were there any charges pressed against him? Do we really know? Was he a counter protester, or was he indeed a homeless man who just didn't really know what was going on?
Hi, Callie. Our investigation did not show that he was assaulted. The stuff that was going on social media said that he was assaulted and a glass bottle was thrown at him, and that he was just in the area, and that is not true. He, from our investigation, he engaged the protest in the street, and but that he was not singled out or attacked as it was reported. In our investigation showed that is the case.
So do we know, was he a counter protester? Has that been determined?
He was against the Proud Boys, and the counter protest organizer did reference him, so they were together.
Okay, thank you. And then also, back in May, you all kind of jumped out of white vans, dressed in riot gear during a Black Lives Matter march. But then it appears, and there's a lot of people saying that, this time it was more of a relaxed approach. Whenever this group has been self-identified as Western chauvinists that come here, and then, why is that? Why was the more relaxed approach? Is it, again, just because it kind of, you all mentioned that you just wanted to stay away to de-escalate the situation?
Well, Kelly, I don't think a relaxed approach is a really accurate way to describe that. No one of the 111 officers were relaxed that day. But one of the things that we learned in that May-June protest, and we heard very loudly, is that people don't like to see our officers in riot gear out at protests because they find it offensive. They find that it accelerates what is happening. And so as we move forward from May to the August 15th protest, we kept those officers in that gear in the background. This wasn't the first time that we had done that.
Okay. And so no way the different response stemmed from the different views of the groups?
No, it did not.
And just one last question. How much money has the city spent on protests this summer?
Kelly, I do not have that answer for you today.
Okay.
Hindsight's always 2020. This is Julie from Fox 17 again. What would you guys do differently in looking back at these incidents?
I just want to say every incident we look back at, and we always see things that we would have done different. And I think we talked about some of those today. It's the best operational plan is to have one and carry it forward. The never having a plan and not putting a plan into places could be the worst thing that you can do. We made a decision that day in this operational plan. And as we look forward, we'll use lessons learned from all the protests and all the events, from events around the country, from our partnering agencies that we've talked to that have experienced the same thing. And we'll move forward using those experiences, trying to come up always with a better operational plan than last time.
Can you be more specific about what you would do in an operational plan that would be different?
I think one of the biggest things, we've said this before, is communication, and trying to communicate even more with the groups coming into town and more intelligence. There's always more that you can do. I think we all see that as we move forward, and we are committed to continuous improvement. It's easy to say the day after that we did it wrong, and the day before that the plan's just right and it's going to work great. The two don't always mix.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any other questions from the
Hey
media?
there. Hello, it's Susan Samples from Wood TV8 up in Grand Rapids.
Hi, Susan. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So was it a mistake to hang back? the way that you did?
I wouldn't call it, it was a strategic decision, Susan. We knew there would be a slight delay moving in, but we also had conversations several times that week with the counter protest organizer who kept telling us it was going to be a peaceful protest, 20 to 30 people. We never anticipated that we would have the Michigan Defense League there with armed rifles and with other weapons in order to face off with whatever the Proud Boys had in mind. So always having the same information afterwards makes us look back, but we didn't have that information at the time. So we made that strategic decision, and the events happened very rapidly that day. We deployed our troops, and the Proud Boys were out of town in 90 minutes.
All right.
So the counter protesters were the aggressors. I mean, that seems like what you've been showing.
We showed what occurred that day through this PowerPoint, and that the first act of aggression that we saw was that disposable frozen cup that was thrown, and that started the skirmish there, and that was by a counter protester.
Okay.
So a counter protester committed the first act of aggression. Did you hear me?
I did hear you, and I think I answered that question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Are there any other questions from the media?
Have any other, have any Proud Boys been investigated or arrested, or any charges pressed against them?
One of my jobs I've been tasked with is investigating, making sure we thoroughly investigate this, and I've assigned detectives to thoroughly go through all the video footage, body cam footage, social media footage, everything that we can obtain, much of which we've shown you today. The investigation shows that most of the felonious assaults and those that were armed with weapons like clubs and bats and batons were from the counter protesters. We do have some cases involving the Proud Boys that would maybe be fighting cases, which would be a city ordinance violation for fighting. But those are ongoing, and we're working to identify those. But the assaulted crimes were from the counter protesters that we made arrests for that day.
Are you saying that the Proud Boys acted in self-defense in all of those instances that you showed? Because as you walked us through every single thing you showed, you pointed out that counter protesters acted first, they threw the first punch, or they did this, or they did that. You even said at one point the pepper spray and the mace was an act of self-defense.
Well, in particular, the mace, at the time that it was dispersed or used, it was in self-defense. In that area on the tape of the video that you watch, that they were being assaulted by the counter protesters. And in good faith and within law, you can use pepper spray or mace in defense of yourself or others.
Okay. I think we've got time for about one or two more questions.
Hey, can you tell us, I'm sorry, where do the arrest charges stand on this right now? How many people have been charged criminally?
We made a total of 9 arrests that day. One charge for resisting and obstructing was authorized, and the other charges were dismissed.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Susan. Our last question, does anybody have anything else?
I have one more question, if no one else does. Just, there was a lot of video showing Proud Boys using pepper spray against the counter protesters. And I mean, wasn't that inciting violence? Would that be considered assault?
Callie, I think that was asked and answered.
But the very presence of them with pepper spray in their hand, that shows that they're prepared to defend themselves and we're prepared for something like this to happen, whereas counter protesters are using frozen cups. And does it show intent to cause an issue when you have things like that, when counter protesters are throwing frozen cups and the Proud Boys have pepper spray ready for someone to throw the first strike?
I think as we walked through the video and showed you the evidence we have, you know, there was pepper spray out there, there was batons, there was frozen cups, there was rocks that were out there that day. The Proud Boys came to town and wanted to create the stir, and they did it. They were very successful in using their words to provoke people to react, and that's what we saw. And that was their goal, and that is their goal, and that's why we wanted them and what they were saying out of town.
So Carrie Ann, just to kind of follow up on that, you said that, you know, they came in from out of town and they accomplished their goal there. Crossing state lines to incite a riot, which is kind of what it sounds like they accomplished, is illegal. Are there any charges being looked at for doing such things?
No, Ryan, there are not.
All right, thanks, Ryan. I think we're going to conclude this press conference this afternoon. As was mentioned earlier, this recording, as well as the PowerPoint presentation that the chiefs presented this afternoon, as well as some of the raw videos, we will be making available. We will send a link out to all of you that have registered for this event, and you will have that just as soon as we're ready to release those to the public in general. I would like to thank Chief Carrie Ann Thomas, Assistant Chief Vernon Copley, and Assistant Chief David Boyson for walking us through that. And I'd like to thank the media for joining us this afternoon. And that concludes this afternoon's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.